How's it going, folks? Jack here with another reaction. Today I'll be checking out a recommendation straight from the Discord server, and this one is on the most horrifying science fiction series of all. We are talking about the written work that inspired the hit Netflix series The Three-Body Problem. This is from a channel called Quinn's Ideas, which is awesome because it seems like the people that subscribe to me know me way too well. As it happens, years ago, I want to say around maybe not so long ago, I was getting back into sci-fi after watching the movie Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. I started rereading some stuff. That series is supposed to have been the one to inspire Star Wars the most, which is often contested by the fact that some mean that Dune was the bigger inspiration, and then you have those who are a bit more well-read on sci-fi who will jump in and say that Asimov and Heinlein are the more inspirational of all, and you're like, okay, we didn't need to go that far. Like, try to understand that when I was getting back and starting to find a series that I would definitely enjoy, I got a lot of inspiration, namely Dune that I cited there. And because some of the lore can be a tad bit confusing, I went on YouTube and searched for some explanation on it, and I actually got on Quinn's channel. So that's quite interesting that this is bringing me back here. But as I've mentioned, we're dealing with the Three-Body Problem, a great book series. I think there are 3 books, or perhaps 4. I do believe that there's an additional that is not made by the original author, but that end up giving flesh, or at least a shape, to the antagonist in the series. It's strange if you're not familiar with this, but nevertheless, this is a video that is most likely going to contain spoilers if you have not read any of the books, nor watched the series. I highly recommend that you do that, but nevertheless, this can be rather interesting as a concept. So without further ado, let us just dive into this one. Oh, by the way, I need to like and subscribe, and you should do the same as well. So let's go.
Hi guys, it's me Quinn, and as always, if you appreciate my content, consider hitting the like button. It's the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me. Recently, I had the pleasure of reading what is likely the most terrifying science fiction book series I've ever read. I've always enjoyed scary stories. As a kid, I read anthologies like Goosebumps or Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. But I didn't know true fear until I encountered the works of Stephen King and H.P. Lovecraft in my teenage years. Lovecraft's work opened up such terrifying vistas of thought that I would, while reading them, become transfixed and filled with ultimate existential dread. The cosmic terrors he wrote about in his stories struck me as somehow realer than the monsters and ghosts of Goosebumps, and that is probably because Lovecraft, in truth, being the flawed man he was expressing a very simple fear. The fear of the unknown. And what is more unknown than the blackness of space? I must admit that not since my early teenage years have I felt such poignant terror while reading as I did when first encountering the work of Lovecraft. That is, until I read the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy.
I gotta say, given that he also mentioned Stephen King, he also has a knack for making some of the more mundane things into absolute works of horror. Like, I remember reading in Tall Grass, who knew that you could make a field of corn so extremely scary? It is wild. But yes, H.P. Lovecraft especially, with his fear of the unknown. Being the floor man that he was, writing about the dread he felt from radiators. Oh, no, was it air conditioners? It's a meme that I will never let go of. It's just too hilarious. He was onto something, the same thing that has inspired us to create a bunch of beliefs through the pareidolia that we have, this whole thing of seeing shapes where they are not there, the imagination that we can have. It's also a double-edged sword in that when there's literally nothing, like when we cannot fathom what is within a void, that starts making us very uneasy.
There are 3 books in this series: The Three-Body Problem, The Dark Forest, and Death's End. There is also an additional book, not written by Sixten Law himself, called Redemption of Time.
Oh, that's the one.
The first book in the series, The Three-Body Problem, starts off as a mystery. As the story unfolds, it starts to feel as though we are reading the unfolding of some grand conspiracy. A conspiracy written into the fabric of the universe itself. Early on in the story, you find out that scientists around the world have been killing themselves. A note left behind by one of the late scientists, Yang Dong, ominously adds to the mysteries, saying only, "All the evidence points to a single conclusion. Physics has never existed and will never exist. I know what I'm doing is irresponsible, but I have no choice." We base so much of our own perception of what we consider to be reality on what we can observe. We look upon the universe and extrapolate from that point. But what if we will never be able to know the truth about the universe? What if the universal constants are not constant? What if the laws of physics are not laws? What if reality isn't real?
Yeah.
Before we get any further into the video, I have to give a spoiler warning. If you have not read this series, I highly recommend you stop this video and do so. If you've read the series or just don't care about spoilers, then continue forth. Now
these were the kind of thoughts that kept me awake at night when I was first starting to get into physics. But even more frustrating was, I guess one could say, the level of complexity of things. As it just so happens, it is the very thing that makes physics complicated. How complex it can get. And likewise, it is, I suppose, the instrument that led to the creation of the Three-Body Problem books. At least, if you take it to the literal interpretation of the observation, that is the three-body problem. We commonly call it the n-body problem today in physics, the actual phenomenon. And it is something that I think, if we are to be fair, we can trace back to Isaac Newton. I guess that's the fair point to start looking at it, because you know the story of the man. Apple fall on his head, there's a pandemic going on in his age, he goes and secludes himself to his country house where he develops Principia Mathematica, where we have all of the calculus, the integral and differential calculation. He developed the gravitational equations that we know today, the ones of motions as well. And with that, he can explain and predict the motions of heavenly bodies. Now, one of the things that Isaac quickly observes is that it's rather easy to deal with a system that involves just two bodies. By considering the relative positions and velocity of two bodies, with respect to the center of gravity of the system, we can alleviate ourselves from some troubles and some unknowns variables and pretty much predict the movements. And that is something that became rather simple to do in a way that we can observe with our planet, the Earth, and the Moon, right? The Earth-Moon system has a gravitational line that does change once in a while, but we can follow it pretty simply. The same way happens when we look at the Sun and the Earth, which is important for us to know when we send things out in outer space. However, things start getting a little weird when we introduce an extra element in the form of, let's say, Jupiter, that also exerts a certain gravitational pull on the Earth. So how do you start making independent variables, or these independent equations that helps us make predictions for these movements? He found out that these things became very, very complicated the more we scale this up. Three bodies is already very difficult to deal with, and even more so when we are starting to look at, let's say, the vastness of our solar system and every single element that we cannot account for. This is then something that leads us to, let's say, looking at another star system like, let's say, Alpha Centauri. That is a binary star system with two suns, and in between them are some planets, and try to predict the movement of those can become pretty complicated. So imagine what happens when you add an extra into the mix. Now, obviously, systems like these remains deterministic, meaning that there's nothing random about the behavior. The problem is then trying to figure out how you deal with them. And that's when we jump into the plot of the three-body problem, because as you can clearly see from the image here, we are dealing with three suns.
If you've read the series or just don't care about spoilers, then continue forth. Now, we won't be getting into all of the details of this series, but I will be giving context on why exactly I think it's so unnerving. Ultimately, the secret of the first book is this: we are not alone in the universe. We are not alone in the Milky Way. Just 4 light years from our own solar system lives another species. They have heard the call of Earth from the vacuum of space. And because their own world is unstable, in a constant state of varying extremes due to the 3-sun structure of their solar system, they have chosen Earth as their new home. They intend to exterminate the human race, like bugs. Though their technology is great, due to the great distance of space, it will take the aliens, named the Trisolarans, 400 years to arrive on Earth. But in the meantime, through technology involving quantum entanglement, they were able to stifle the progress of human scientific development. Scientific theories based on humanity's current understanding of physics were rendered useless. The Trisolarans had led humankind into a trap, and the trap had snapped closed, leaving humanity as a helpless victim, only capable of waiting until the predator arrived to claim its prey. Everything that humankind did was monitored in real time by the Trisolarans as their fleet made its way from their homeworld to the world of Earth. Nothing could be concealed from them save the thoughts hidden away within the individual human minds. For a while, the world struggles to adjust, attempting to find solutions. It was briefly considered that a portion of the human species might be sent off into the vacuum of space on generational ships. Escapism would have had 3 potential goals. The first option would be finding a new world among the stars where humanity could survive. This would have been the most ideal option. But the next option would be a starship civilization, its citizens aboard an eternal voyage. The third option would have been for humanity to take temporary refuge among the stars. They would hope to return after Trisolaris had settled in the solar system and attempt to coexist with the aliens. But escapism could never truly happen. Not because humanity's technology couldn't potentially reach the level sufficient enough to allow it, but because human nature would prevent it from ever getting off the ground. It is simply a matter of who is allowed to leave. And
that's a wild thing that I love about some sci-fi books, because it's not always about the extraterrestrial stuff. It's certainly an element to add to the eeriness of it, but when we just look at ourselves, we get pretty much creeped out by the decisions that we often make. Another book is not a series, it's just one book that has dealt with this without the extraterrestrial element that I often will recommend to people who might want to get into like generational space travel as a solution to solve Earth's problem. Is a book called Arkwright by Alan Steele. It's amazing that deals with these kind of things, the geopolitics that get involved sometimes, seeing from the perspective of a single family over many generations, the religious discussions that we encounter, the cultural stuff, all of those things are factors that I cannot imagine being a leader in a position like that and have to direct people to make them understand that, hello, put your differences aside, we need to work together. But how do you even get to select who gets to survive? Those are some scary decisions that you have to make.
And who is condemned to face the wrath of the Trisolarans on Earth? No matter who got to leave, whether they be elite or poor, humankind's fundamental value system would ultimately collapse, for the idea of equality would be utterly shattered. Human rights and equality have deep roots. Inequality of survival is the worst sort of inequality, and the people and countries left behind will never just sit and wait for death while others have a way out. There will be increasingly extreme confrontations between the two sides until there's world chaos, and then no one goes. The United Nations, realizing this simple fact, overwhelmingly voted to ban escapism, instead choosing to focus on what they could do from Earth to thwart the Trisolarans, including the formation of a space force. Even with everything the world leaders attempted in order to maintain stability, eventually society did collapse in an apocalyptic testing event known as the Great Ravine. During the Great Ravine, the Space Force was brought to the brink of collapse. Inflation skyrocketed, Credit systems unraveled. It started with the slow economic transformation that often accompanied wartime. The standard of living declined, and the political climate grew more and more intense. But instead of it just being one or a few countries, it was the entire Earth. Society was on edge, and if you said something wrong, they would say you were ETO or a traitor to humanity. So nobody felt safe, and film and television from the Golden Age began to be restricted, and then was banned worldwide. But eventually, things got even worse. Humanity began to starve. Climate change had already been greatly accelerating. With the coming of the Trisolaran crisis, humanity grew pessimistic. Even if they saved the Earth, made it into Eden come again, it would be an Eden for the Trisolarans, not them. Only the Space Force was given thought, and its continued development only further polluted the Earth.
Accelerated it.
So climate change accelerated. The environment changed. The temperature raised. Forest and plains became desert. The process of desertification had not been subtle or gradual. The green of the earth had eroded simultaneously like a damp towel left out to dry in the sun. Food production halted, for there was no grain being grown. And for the next 50 years, the planet was famished. The population of the earth decreased by 5 billion during those years. All while the Trisolaran fleet marched on steadily. One of the most intriguing things about these books, mainly the second book, The Dark Forest, is how they show the effect that the imminent Trisolaran invasion has on humanity before the aliens even arrive within the solar system. Initially, many people denied that the invasion was truly real. Once the truth became widely accepted, a sense of dread crept over all mankind.
I mean,
religions had to change to make way for the existence of extraterrestrials. Humanity could no longer hide behind the comforting fantasy of our own uniqueness. We were not unique.
That's one of the great depictions that was made throughout the entire adaptation, which is, for one, super sad that the person who what was his name? This Chinese billionaire who was a game maker. Lin Kui? I think it is so. Please forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. But he, in collaboration with the two guys who worked on Game of Thrones, so help us all that they don't end up affecting the end of this series in the same way they did with Game of Thrones, but actually got working on the show. Unfortunately, because he had hired a man who ended up being demoted because of his conflict of interest, said man, a Shu something, that's how I remember him, was tried to poison Lin, the creator of the show. And he succeeded eventually because of his demotion. Crazy stuff. And he was just sentenced to death here in 2024, close to the release of the Netflix adaptation. Unfortunately, Lin died because of this poisoning and did not get to see his work come to fruition. But beside the point, which is very sad, but beside that, the depiction of misinformation that was handled in the show was very great. The gaslighting that the Santi did on us was amazing. But also this brings to mind laws written by two authors, Arthur C. Clarke and the other one, I wish I could remember his first name, Sherman, where Arthur C. Clarke postulated that every sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which I guess that we can kind of all understand if we were to travel back in time and were to display the things that we can nowadays. We most likely will be deemed as witches or warlocks, whichever ones you want to pick. Where Sherman's postulate is that any sufficiently technologically advanced beings are indistinguishable from gods. The same thing that we clearly observe within the show, where we have the faction called the Redemptionists who end up worshipping the Santis and putting blind faith into them. Quite literally, the leader is calling them my lord or our lord. And that's kind of like an eerie thing because it starts tapping into such things as morality systems, right? Because again, that's one of the many problems with this show or story with regards to humanity. Are we able to make the right decisions in the way that this faction was trying to aid the Santee because they deemed the human morality system as inferior, whereas that of the Santee, whom they saw as gods, was superior.
We were one of the potentially endless civilizations out there in the dark. The scariest part of this book series, in my opinion, is also in the second book, The Dark Forest. In this book, we begin to unravel the truth about the state of life in the universe. The book calls us to consider cosmic sociology. If you supposed that a vast amount of civilizations were distributed throughout the universe based on the
Fermi
number
paradox.
of detectable stars,
Yeah.
those civilizations would make up the body of cosmic sociology. Cosmic sociology is based on two axioms. First, survival is the primary need of civilization. Second, civilization continuously grows and expands, but the total number of matter in the universe remains constant.
Yeah.
These two axioms are all that is needed to extrapolate the ultimate horrifying truth about cosmic society.
Thanos.
It is a secret that the Trisolarans themselves knew, and called the most important secret in the universe. It was the secret that the universe itself was a dark forest. The universe is a dark forest. Every civilization an armed hunter stalking through the trees like a ghost, gently pushing aside branches that block the path and trying to tread without sound. Even breathing is done with care. The hunter has to be careful because everywhere in the forest are stealthy hunters like him. If he finds other life, another hunter, an angel or a demon, a delicate infant or a tottering old man, a fairy or a demigod, there is only one thing he can do: open fire and eliminate them. In this forest, hell is other people, an eternal threat that any life that exposes its own existence will be swiftly wiped out. This is the picture of cosmic civilization. It's the explanation for the Fermi paradox. The famous Fermi paradox, of
wild.
course, brings up the quandary. If based on what we know about the universe, it should be full of life, then where is said life?
It's hiding.
Why is the universe seemingly silent? This series provides a single terrifying answer. We don't see them because they are hiding. Like all life on Earth, life in the universe must compete to survive. It is a cruel fact about the nature of life itself. If the location of a world is revealed, it is marked in a way. A metaphorical spotlight is shown upon it, a blinking sign stating, "There is intelligent life here. Destroy it before it destroys you." Eventually the mark will be noticed. It is only a matter of time. It doesn't matter what motivated someone to leave the mark. What's important is that the dead hand has stretched the nerves of the dark forest to the breaking point, and it's the most sensitive nerve that's most liable to make a move. Suppose there are 1 million hunters in the forest. The number of civilizations on the billions upon billions of stars in the Milky Way could be thousands of times that. Perhaps 900,000 of them will disregard the marking. Of the remaining 100,000, maybe 99,000 of them will probe the location, and after confirming that it has no life, disregard it. But one of the remaining 10,000 hunters will surely make the choice to fire on that position. Because for civilizations at a certain level of technological development, attacking may be safer and less of a hassle than probing. If there's really nothing at that location, then there's no loss. The idea...
Yeah, I can see that, but man, it's also weird because then we have other examples such as the work in the Jeremy Renner, it wasn't, an Amy Adams movie, Arrival, where a sufficiently developed alien race would show up at our doorstep and want to cooperate and literally teach us their language, communicate with us to stifle a cataclysmic event. That is also a scenario that I see. Like, I've always had this thought that despite the fact that largely evolved, sufficiently developed alien race that will show up to us might not even care, because why would they? Lest they actually like feel pity for us and want to help us in a certain degree. Why would they care about wiping us out in the same way that we might not even consider a bunch of ants that we're seeing outside? So that's sometimes how I've seen these things, but obviously I could be wrong about that. But one thing that is great about this cosmic hierarchy is obviously that they are also, i.e. the Santi in this case, are also prey, because there are predators that are way more dangerous than them. So at the end of the day, they are doing this for their survival, and they deem that to be the safest option for them. But yeah, it's still messed up.
The idea that the universe could be a dark forest strikes fear into my very core. Humans have always seemed to be fascinated with the idea of extraterrestrial life, making contact. For more than 100 years, we have blasted the sky with signals, sending pieces of our world out onto the cosmos in the form of waves, never thinking about exactly who might be listening. Though humans have revealed themselves to the Trisolarans, who only wanted to colonize the Earth for themselves, there were things far worse and far more powerful than the Trisolarans. Ancient civilizations were shielded in the dark and armed with the power to rip apart dimensions. Another fascinating and also quite troubling concept Sixenlil forces us to consider in his books is the potential effect that life has had upon the universe itself. Without life, the Earth would be a different planet. There would be no oceans, no rivers. The entire surface of the planet would be as dry as Mars. Life is not some tiny shell clinging to the surface of the world, fragile waiting to be snuffed out in an instant. Life, with the aid of time, is powerful enough to move mountains. And without life, it is very possible that by what we now consider to be the modern era, liquid water would not exist on planet Earth. Plants, animals, and bacteria all have had important roles in the present composition of our atmosphere. Without life, the atmosphere would be very different. It's possible that such an atmosphere would not be able to shield the surface of the Earth against solar winds and ultraviolet rays. And the oceans would evaporate. Soon, greenhouse effects would turn the Earth's atmosphere into a copy of Venus's, and then water vapor would be lost to space over time. After several billion years, the Earth would be dry. The Earth that we and all other life on this planet inhabit is ultimately a home constructed by life for itself. If we take this idea and apply it to the universe itself, then this thought occurs. If life has had such a drastic effect on the Earth, then what effect has life as a whole had on the universe itself? And what would the universe look like without life? If life was exceedingly rare in the universe, its impact on the evolution of the cosmos could be ignored. But if the universe was in fact teeming with life, as the famous Drake equation suggests, then a terrifying question arises. How much has the universe from its original state been altered by life?
Yeah, that was an actual presentation that I had in my first year of university. I did that over Zoom. That was odd. But yeah, having to talk about the Drake equation was... It's a weird one, because again, if we go back here, mind you, it's a pure multiplication, right? If there is but one component that is set as 0, it falls apart. So it's not like how Enrico Fermi has plenty of justification. This one is a little bit more kind of straightforward to answer. But yeah, it's a nice work of speculation.
Then a terrifying question arises. Life. Is the nature that we experience natural at all? A terrifying revelation comes near the end of the final book in the series, Death's End. The universe had once been 10-dimensional, a state of perfection, but due to the destructive nature of life itself, those dimensions have collapsed, and the universe will continue to collapse until only a single dimension remained. countless ancient civilizations potentially possess the capability of initiating dimension collapses in parts of the universe. It was one of the methods that hunters in the Dark Forest used to eliminate other intelligent species. The problem was that once a dimension strike occurred, it never ended. The universe itself was dying, drying up in patchwork formation as the Earth had done during the Great Ravine. The endless cosmic darkness that we saw as the universe today had been the result of the endless battles of the Dark Forest, and we as humans would never know the true beauty and perfection of the original cosmos.
Okay.
Aside from pure existential dread, this series has so many great science fiction ideas that I just love, such as the idea of cryogenics. The philosophy behind people being willing to freeze themselves in the present in order to wake up in the future is based on a very human but often not true assumption.
Yeah.
That the future will somehow be better than now. Many of the characters throughout this book series experience being frozen and unthawed in a different era. I find it fascinating to read about how someone from a specific era interacts with the world and the people of a new era. This idea is also at the heart of one of my all-time favorite science fiction shows, the lighthearted animation show Futurama, whose main character, after being frozen for 1,000 years, wakes up in the year 3000 and has to deal with the fact that not only is he living in a world completely alien to him, but also everyone that he's ever known is dead. Cixin Lu's use of the concept of this helped to illustrate the idea that humans are humans even when coming from a different era. Cixin Lu throughout this series also explores the concept of the long view of history. He explores how certain events and figures throughout human history evolve in the way they are perceived by humanity. Men become gods, gods become devils, heroes become villains, and vice versa. We see this mainly with the characters Luo Ji and Shangxin as their stories progress throughout the centuries, and also the inhabitants of the ships Blue Space and Gravity, who at certain points in history considered to be the enemies of all mankind, and at other points take on near mythic proportions in the mind of some humans, all due to the varying perspectives created by the different vantage points of time.
Okay, well then I'm gonna enjoy this. The aforementioned arc, right, has a similar thing, where they, I know that I'm currently just spoiling the book here, but where you have a literal generation of embryos that are set into space, frozen and then somehow incubated to some techno mumbo jumbo, and then the spaceship has to find a suitable planet from where they could then repopulate. And of course, because of radiation and a bunch of things, the development of the beings that were there are still bipedal, but they are less human-like. And the humans that we know have become mythical creatures to them. And they are, to a certain degree, kind of worshipped. And the funny thing is that there's still like a satellite orbiting the planet, and they're viewing that thing as a god. It's so much fun.
On the whole, humanity seems to possess fleeting short-term memories, and ideas that aren't constantly reinforced instantly fade away in the midst of time. This is the reason that humanity seems to constantly repeat its old mistakes. We as a species simply forget. Some would say that Cixin Lu's trilogy is a quite pessimistic one, and I have to agree to an extent. Cixin Lu does seem to present a pretty pessimistic view of human nature as a whole. Though certain individuals can sometimes come up with solutions that could potentially help, the human entity as a whole for some reason resists. It is easy to see the Trisolaran crisis in particular as a metaphor for climate change. Destruction is imminent, perhaps distant but certain, and it's likely that modern humans won't be affected nearly as much as the generations to come after.
Yeah.
Can humankind come together to stop this crisis and ensure the survival of its future generations? One of the most interesting parts of the series is when we get to see how the various governments cooperate when it comes to dealing with the crisis in the beginning. At some point, the book mentions that there was a push for socialized technology, which would have given the human race as a whole a greatly increased chance of survival. The major world powers flat out rejected this notion because they believed it would weaken them. Not even the sure threat of alien annihilation was enough to force the world to cooperate. The US government said that no form of socialized technology was realistic, that it was a naive idea, and that under the present circumstances, US national security was a priority, second only to planetary defense. I would say that humankind as a whole is depicted as being rather selfish in this series, and many times we see how the species cannibalizes itself.
Yeah.
Humanity is often its own greatest hindrance. The books are not all pessimism, however. The final book in the series, Death's Sin, does in fact end with certain optimistic undertones by highlighting the endurance of the human race and its spirit. Sixth Look combines philosophy, science, and pure horror to create what is honestly one of the best science fiction book series I've ever read. The series is endlessly bold and unpredictable. Even the spoilers I've mentioned in this video barely begin to get to the place where these books eventually go. The third book, Death's Sin, gets more into the idea of the interdimensionality of the universe, which is endlessly intriguing and quite trippy actually. The series feels boundless in a way that a lot of other books just don't. The questions about humanity, about the universe that are brought up in this series are questions that I've been pondering since I read it a few months ago. The books aren't scary in the traditional sense, but the ideas it explores are chilling to the bone. The Remembrance of Earth's Past is science fiction at its best, and I hope to cover more of the series and explore some of its other concepts in future videos. Thanks so much for watching, guys.
That was dope.